Personalization is addressed in three ways: through people's interests, through readiness, and through learning styles. And so it's really critical to have a structure in a school whereby kids are known as individuals, so that what is standardized is excellence, not the way you get there. So in personalized approaches, there is an approach to, let's say, readiness being addressed by flexible groupings, interests being addressed through the idea of giving kids choice in what they do, and a real attempt to find out what their interests and blending those into the curriculum that's being addressed, and where possible, understanding kids' best learning styles and using that as a way of enhancing learning as well. In the great economies, people recognize that the most important natural resource is people. So education is used to have people maximize their potential. In structures where you think that there is some other natural resource that's going to be the most important, perhaps the individual is downplayed, but in the great economies it's recognized that everybody has to be at their best. And personalization does that. So we're not just talking about kids who are at the top or bottom of the academic pyramid. Everybody through that pyramid needs to be taught at a level where they maximize their potential. And when that happens, you get the most productive aspect of education being addressed. Everybody's learning to their potential. That should be a major theme of every school. Well, there's a famous cliche that equal is not always fair. So in a personalized setting, the structure would be that what would be standardized would be excellence. Often in schools today, what is standardized is the very basics. In a really good personalized school, everybody is working at high potential, so we start with the minimum standard. We're not going to go below that. So people are going to be expected to be taught at a level that they can really reach the potential. And it doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all and that kids are out doing everything they want. It means that inside high-end academic parameters, that kids are given the opportunity to be at their best through working on their interests, through working at the readiness level, and through, where possible, of course, their learning styles. Well, personalization really addresses intrinsic motivation. When students are taught in ways that are meaningful to them, when they're being given choice, when they can work at their own level, they produce a lot more. It's research-based, and it is very clear that's a far more stimulating way to teach children. In a classroom, you would see students working in collaborative groups. You would see students working on choice. You'd see students being given the capacity to self-assess and to be aware of what it is quality. There'd be less stand and deliver by the teacher, whereby the teacher's simply teaching content. There's a far more heavy emphasis on students being able to apply their information and not just getting a content-delivered curriculum. K-12 and even into adult education, everybody learns best when they're given choice and opportunities to be at their best. The teacher really has to move away from one size fits all. So instead of standing and teaching to all the kids all the time, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen. In classrooms, there will be times, even in personalized classrooms, where teachers have to stand and deliver. But the key thing is that the teacher needs to learn to be more of a facilitator than somebody who just passes on content knowledge. That means you need to be trained to know how to facilitate, to change a means of assessment to far more formative assessment, and be given the skills to be able to bring together all the classroom in more of a facilitative approach. The first thing Radiant does is to make sure that the school administration and the teachers totally understand what personalization means. So there's heavy emphasis on professional development, where the administration and teachers are clearly aware of the mindset that goes into personalizing classrooms. And then secondly, Radiant Learning works heavily with the administration so that the school is structured to facilitate the personalization approach inside the classrooms. We also give heavy PD to the teachers, and then we give a lot of mentoring and coaching so that we have ongoing assistance to people who are associated with the Radiant schools. Personalization can be used towards any aspect of learning, but the real skill is for the teacher to know when, for how long, how do they assess, but it goes across the whole spectrum. Well, one of the things is to give students an interest inventory to determine how best to personalize, to really know your students. And so interest inventories, dialogue with students, opportunities to really see where the kids excel. Also looking at past teacher comments, looking at the CUME records, to really be prepared to incorporate those students into your classroom in a unique way. So once that is done, you'd be able to use assessment to put students into flexible groupings. And this is not the old tracking structure where kids are put into a group and stay there forever. These kids are put into flexible groupings that could be, let's say, 6 weeks long. And then they're reassessed to see where they should be based on the next topic. So readiness is addressed through flexible groupings. You'd also see inside classrooms teachers giving students choice to learn the outcomes through approaches or through themes that the kids might want to talk about. Rather than having everybody do something on snowmen or dinosaurs, there's more opportunities for kids to pick and choose. And not only that, they don't have to work in isolation, but they could also work in groups with other people who share the same interests. So this is not about personalization and having it so that people are individualized. It's personalization also means that there's a real opportunity to collaborate with kids with the same interests. And then you'd see, like I say, much choice in classrooms, opportunities for kids to self and peer assess, and you'd see a real attempt to have in-depth knowledge being taught to kids and working on authentic project-based learning. Well, parents and students play a role in this right from the kindergarten level up. They can assist the teacher by helping them understand the child. So in a discussion with the parent, the teacher can be made aware of what the child really likes. When the child's talking to the teacher in a co-teaching way, so that the child is actually part of the discussion as opposed to the teacher talking down to the child. It also shows a great deal of respect for the child's interests and abilities. So parents and teachers, parents and children really help the teacher to be more effective in designing a program in a way such that the child is a participant. Yes, you don't need more resources in a school. What you need is better use of them. The big issue behind personalization is not bringing in more resources of any kind. What it is training teachers and having kids also aware of what they're to do so that you utilize resources and time more effectively, those resources and time that you already have. Well, personalization, if done well, will enhance student opportunity to get into better universities and to excel. And that's for a number of reasons. One is that even in a personalized approach, it doesn't mean that there still aren't standardized assessments during the teaching. It's just that there's more of a heavy emphasis on informative assessment and not so much on summative assessment. But there is summative assessment. So kids are still expected to learn at a very high level. The difference is they're not held back by artificial barriers like ceilings, like grade 2 or a grade 4 or a grade 10 curriculum. If the child can move beyond that, he should be able to. Therefore, he's far more prepared, if he's prepared to work and is taught well, to get into a better university and to excel at the content that's being taught. Well, it's a combination of many things, starting with the idea that the curriculum centers around basic high-level standards, but in such a way that the child, inside those parameters of high expectations, is able to be intrinsically motivated by having the chance to do topics that interest them and can work at a pace that can put them way beyond what the traditional standardized curriculum would allow. Therefore, by the time it gets through a particular grade or through, let's say, high school, they could be way beyond. And in effect, if schools work closely with the universities, kids in high school could be at the level to take university courses either online or directly from the universities, and they'll be far more prepared to excel and be prepared for university. There are a number of resources, but when it comes to technology, the use of online curriculum, for instance, the concept of learning anytime, anywhere, any place. If students can be given access to programs online where they work at their own pace and there's feedback, and there are those programs that exist, you can supplement or enhance your regular school curriculum by letting kids be unleashed to be able to work at home on topics that they're interested in. It just greatly enhances what the teacher can do. In a personalized approach, the teacher needs to learn to be more effective at facilitating learning and not just delivering content. We know now that kids at a very young level can go on and Google content and knowledge, and it's very easily accessible. No longer is the teacher that fountain of knowledge. The teacher has to change to a facilitator and allowing kids to take high-level information and apply it in an authentic way and hopefully on authentic challenges. One of the important things in schools is to be systemic in the way you implement personalization. What you don't want to have would be just a few hero teachers who are very effective at personalizing and engaging kids and getting to know them. What you need is that to be right across the whole system. And one of the most effective ways of doing that is through strong professional learning communities, whereby teachers understand that they're no longer in private practice, and the autonomy that they have is more group than personal autonomy. So teachers work together very collaboratively to design lessons, to design flexible groupings so that all teachers are responsible for all children inside the groups at all time. And that creates systemic excellence and allows people to be more effective because of collaboration. The issue concerning resources or costs with Radiant is really addressed through professional development. The big challenge is to continually have teachers working at their most effectively using best practice. So the big cost or the big challenge or the big emphasis is not on just providing high-end materials, but making sure that your teachers are very, very professional and are using 21st century best practices. If we're going to go see a doctor and engineer, we wouldn't expect people to be stuck in time. We'd expect these professionals to be at the cutting edge of what is best practice. So anybody associated with Radiant Schools would expect that their teachers would have that kind of professional development offered to them, and that there'd be monitoring or mentoring and coaching to make sure that they're effectively implementing that. That's the big cost when it comes to time, but it's more the idea of the passion to teach well. And back to the earliest comment about personalization, we need to believe that kids are our most important natural resource. If that's the case, then time and money and effort are certainly worth it. Social and emotional intelligence is critical for the 21st century for a lot of reasons. One is that we are now into a knowledge or creative society, and the skills that people need or students need to be successful in the 21st century need to be intentionally taught. And those schools set around the need to have kids to be aware of interpersonal and intrapersonal skills. I mean, no longer are people working in isolation on assembly lines. There's more and more need to develop the ability to work inside teams, to collaborate, to work with people who may be across the world from you. So schools have to really become aware of what the end goal of a 21st century graduate is and make sure that our students are able to have the skills that allow them to be successful anywhere, anytime, so that they are accepted by employers because they are creative, they are trustworthy, they are students or employees who will make a contribution to the industry or to the business and are really ready to learn whatever strategies a new business will teach them. So it's a very critical mind change away from the way we're teaching towards a whole new paradigm of what an educated person is. The difference between social and emotional intelligence is often not clearly delineated. And really, social intelligence talks about people's interpersonal skills, the ability to get along with people socially, the ability to make sure that they're aware of other people's thinking. So interpersonal skills are really connected to social. The emotional intelligence is often linked to intrapersonal, or the ability of a person to, inside themselves, to do things like to delay gratification, to have empathy, to stay focused. And so both of those skills are critical in a 21st century setting if the individual wants to be highly successful. Well, social and emotional intelligence affects students by enabling them to get along better with their peers, to stay focused, to delay gratification, to take on the skills that an effective learner needs. So no longer are they passive learners, but they're expected to be people who will take responsibility for their own learning. And again, inter and intrapersonal are necessary skills so the kids can be in charge of their own learning. Social and emotional intelligence in no way interfere with academic excellence. In fact, they enhance them. When students are able to be focused, when students can work more effectively inside groups, when students are really motivated because of intrinsic motivation, then in fact the regular learning is enhanced. We've seen that time after time in research where when social emotional intelligence is really effectively blended with the curriculum, then you get a much stronger student. Well, if emotional and social intelligence are taught properly, then you will see students become more invested in their learning. They're more aware of why they're learning. Passive students do not create good students. So when you can really have students develop intrinsic motivation, when they have the skills to work with colleagues, when they have the skills to stay focused, then you're going to see a much higher learning take place. And it's going to be more authentic learning as well. Well, again, we at Radiant Schools, we develop social and emotional intelligence by really providing training for the teacher so that they can model it. It's not about teaching it like you teach a course. It's an environment. So starting with the teachers who display what those capabilities are, Radiant Learning begins with the teachers, gives them effective instruction on how to work together, how to really understand the value of social and emotional intelligence, and how to teach it. And then there are things you can do inside a classroom. You can teach mindfulness. You can have structures where you have kids work to address authentic activities like assisting the poor. There's all kinds of ways, specifically, that you can make sure that kids are genuinely using those skills as part of an educational experience.